I'm learning a lot of Gemara. Today's daf is daf Hey. Actually, it's not this daf Vav, and we are up to the Mishnah. Now, we're introducing over here the idea of Eidin Zaymin, which we learn a lot more about later in Masechta Makkas, Sanhedrin, and we have it, spread out throughout Shasta. Basically, Eidin Zaymin is two witnesses come and testify about a certain event. And another two witnesses come along and say, well, we don't know if the event happened or not. It didn't happen, but one thing is for sure, you weren't there. And the thing is that we listen to the agents and when Machlek is a buy of a rubber, whether it's Chidushu and it's only from now on, or it's retrospective that they're liars. But bottom line is, we believe the second witnesses, and what do we do with the first witnesses? We punish them. But we darshan, kasher zamam v'loy kasher asa. Interesting, there's no such Maimah Chazal anywhere in the Gemara, kasher zamam v'loy kasher asa. It comes from Rashi. Rashi's quote is on the pasuk says kasher zamam, and Rashi adds v'loy kasher asa. So that became the saying. Kasher zamam v'loy kasher. Now what that means is what they intended to do, but hasn't done yet. So here we have like a very small window when we say that Eidim Zaymin get punished. The window is Bezin had to make a ruling based on their testimony. It's not enough that they just came and testified. Bezin made a ruling, but Bezin has not yet implemented that ruling. The moment that Bezin implements that ruling, it's no longer kasher zamam. It's already kasher also, like they did. So, okay, that's an important fact to remember when we talk about this Gemara here. We're going to talk about the Eidim who come along and say that this field that used to belong to Reuven now belongs to Shimon, because Shimon has a chazak of 3 years, and Shimon obviously claims that he bought it, and where's the shtar? He lost it, but he was there for 3 years. That's what the Eidim testified, and turned out to be that they were liars. They weren't there to testify that Reuven Shimon was there for 3 years, so we have to punish them, as the Mishnah will say. Says the Mishnah. Shimon brought 2 witnesses that he was there for 3 years, and therefore the field now is his. The Nimtzu Zaymim turned out to be that they were liars. We're in and all of the very bottom of the page of the Mishnah. Turned out to be they were liars. Mishalmin loyas hakol. They have to pay everything. Now, what does that mean? They have to pay everything. That means that the field that Shimon is sitting in now gets taken away and given back to Reuven. Plus, they wanted to forfeit Reuven. Let's say the field is worth $1,000. They wanted Reuven to incur a loss of $1,000. So in addition, these Eidim have to pay $1,000 to Reuven. So Reuven gets back his field, plus he gets the $1,000 that the Eidim tried to make him lose. And the 2 Eidim, we learned we learned that the Eidim divide the money. Now, actually, this is very problematic because Eidim Zaymin can only be once the Bezin made a ruling. And once Bezin made a ruling by Chazakah, what happens when Bezin made a ruling? They don't have to go and kill the person. The moment they make a ruling, okay, the Chazakah is a valid Chazakah, the field became Shimon's. It's no longer kasher zamam, it's kasher asa. It's not possible ever to have a case over here of kasher zamam v'loy kasher asa. Because if Bezin didn't make a ruling yet based on the testimony of the Eidim that the field belongs to Shimon, that is known as the Eidim Zaymin. Bezin had to rule, yes, this field belongs, okay, Chazakah, he had a taina, he bought it from Reuven, the field now belongs to Shimon. The moment Bezin utters those words, the field now belongs to Shimon, it's Shimon's field. That's kasher asa. Could be based on this. There's a famous riva in Taisus above a comment of Dalon Beis, where Taisus says that when it comes to dinei mammos, there's no such thing as kasher zamam v'lo kasher asa, because he uses the words there, if I remember correctly, efshe b'chazara. You can always reverse it. When it comes to malchus, once you gave the lashes, once you killed someone, you can't reverse it. It can't be undone. So kasher zamam v'lo kasher asa. What's the logic in that? It's a kal v'chayim. If he only intended to hurt somebody, we're going to punish the witnesses. If they actually did hurt somebody, we're not going to punish the witnesses. So we'll talk about that in Seth Makkas, beautiful Ramban, Yosef, Kesef Mishnah, and so on. But getting back over here, the moment, but once the Rival says, there's no, we don't say dinei mammos, and they're trying to argue with him, and they want to know what his basis is. This can be the basis right here. How do they deal with those who are showing more hold that there's no difference between mammos and by the death? Once Bezin made a ruling and implemented it, it's too late. So they say it must be talking about that Shimon is not standing on the field. But even from the beginning, this Masechta says that when does Chazakah work? Only if after the 3 years and the whole dispute, whatever it is, and that Shimon brings the witnesses, he is standing on the field. He's standing on the field, that becomes his field. Kozman is not standing on the field, even though we have the witnesses that he was there for 3 years. It doesn't become his. How does it become his? So you're going to have to learn. Pshat the Mishnah here is that that Shimon is not standing on the field, so the Bezdin Psak hasn't been implemented yet. It hasn't happened. That's the only way you can learn. Okay, weiter. Shnayim, but it's showing that here's an interesting case. We had a little bit like this in Ksuvas. 2 witnesses come. We had it before as well. 2 witnesses come along and say that we saw him there for a year. Shnayim Mishniya, another 2 witnesses come along and say we saw another year. Mishnayim Mishlisha, another witness come along and say we saw him a 3rd year. Is Mishal Shlim Beinayim. So then they were found liars, and each one pays a certain amount. Each group pays a third. Now, the next case, which is totally unrelated. No, they're all found. They're all found to be liars. Yeah. They combine. We had it before. We had in Ksuvas, we had it before as well. That you can combine the 2 because they're all saying, different years, and you take your collective. What about Shloisha Achim, 3 brothers? 3 brothers. Each brother comes along and says, I saw Shimon there for another year, but each brother brings a separate witness with him. So, so if we treat them like 3 separate Adison, even though they're all talking about the same field, we don't say the car of apostle. We'll say 3 different Adison, and each one is one brother and a stranger for an age. It should be all right. So the Mishnah says, Shloisha Achim, the Echad Mistarif Mayim, another person joins them. Had Elu Shalosh Adis. They are considered 3 different Adis. But the Chiddush is, but the Hein Adus Achas LaHazama. Since when it comes to Hazama, you cannot be mazim until you mazim. All the edim are involved. Over here also, when it comes to hazama, they're all joined together and they're involved. Yeah, there's no hazama. There's no hazama. Actually, we'll have a mishnah there later. What happens if you have more than 2 people? We'll have the Vavam base there in Makkos. But Makkos Shloisha L'Shnayim. Just like Shnayim, they're not Muslim until both of them are Muslim. So if we have 3, that are Muslim to all 3 of them are Muslim. Okay, Mishnah L'Chayda, our Mishnah says that he had 3 separate groups of Edom, and we'll count them like one Edom, and it works. So right, 2 Edom come along and say that Shimon was there for a year, Tavshin Pei, and 2 Edom come along and say Tavshin Pei Aleph, and 2 Edom come along and say Tavshin Pei Beis. We'll combine the 2 and say 3, and we'll say, well, we have Edom for 3 years. Not everyone seems to be agreeable with that. Why? What's the Ma'aseh Akiva? The time of the Braisa, Amar Rabbi Yosi says, Kishaholach Abba Chalafta, when Abba Chalafta, which is his father, Stam Rabbi Yosi ben Chalafta. So Eitza Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, when he went to Ben Nuri, Rabbi Yechon Nuri, Luma to learn Torah, or others say the other way around. Amar Rabbi Yechon ben Nuri, Eitza Abba Chalafta, Luma to learn Torah. Maloi. And he said to him, if Shimon there has witnesses for 1 year that he was, inhabited the land, and then Shniya b'fnei Shnayim, and then the 2nd year for another group of 2, Shalishis b'fnei Shnayim, the 3rd year for another group of 2, Mao. Can we combine the Edis to say that it's one Chazak or not? Or do we say, since you don't have 1 pair of Edis for the entire 3 years, you don't have Edis? Clearly, we combine the Edis, it's considered a Chazak. However, you should know, not everyone agrees with that. So the other one, whoever it was, Abba Chalafta, said yes, that is correct. I want you to know, Akiva actually argues. Why? Akiva says, it says in the pasuk, Al Pishnayim Eden, you can dover is a complete thing. Dover, not a half a thing. And here, each group of Eden is talking about a half a thing, a year. No, but Rabbanon. How can these Tanoim say that it's a good Edis? But straight to Klor, Apishnayim Edin Yokum Dover, Chatzi Dover. Hi Dover, Chatzi Dover, my Abdullah. What do they do with Dover, Chatzi Dover? What does it come to exclude? Elem Lemute, to exclude a totally different case. Echad Oime Begaba, a girl to become Bas Mitzvah, saying the guy, you need 2 sides. And we don't need necessarily the two hairs to be right next to each other. It can be in different parts. So one is, let's say, on one part of the stomach, another one's in a crease, another part of the stomach. But as long as you see two hairs sprouting, that's puberty. That's a sign of puberty. They don't have to be together. But what happened here was one eight only saw one hair and another in one region, and another eight saw another hair in another region. Do we combine the eight? So it's a chatzi dover, and that's what the Rabbanan say. It means when it says dover v'lo chatzi dover. So you want to say, yeah, well, if it comes to exclude, one of them says achas begabom. And one of them says, one part of the body, one part, and this, and another part. This is not much more than just a chatzi davar. Each one's only saying half a edus. What's one here? One here is worthless. So each one is not only saying a half a thing, because you need two hairs, but also saying half of an edus. In this case here, you had two edim. In our case, by Chazak, you had two edim. The problem is they only saw chatzi davar. There's no chsan in the edus. The chsan is in what they saw. In the case that you're giving me, the chsan is not only in what they saw. The chsan is you only had one eid seeing it. So what I need a pasuk to tell me that the Rav is Pishnayim 80, 280. So says that the high chatzi dover the chatzi edus. So it's more than just a chatzi dover. It's a half edus as well. Elamut to the following case. What if Shnayim? Two witnesses come in and say achas begabo, and then the Shnayim and another two witnesses come in and say achas bekrisa. They come in and say that we saw the other hair there. So the chayda you have mamish two edus in each one. No son of the edus. Son is that each one only saw half a thing. No, so what's the difference in that and chazaka? So why, according to Chachamim, we say that is not valid because each one only saw half a dover. No, and chazaka also each one saw half a dover. So the Rashbam explains very nicely. The Rashbam says over here, not only you could have seen both hairs at the same time, they stood a little bit, both looked together, they would have seen both hairs. But also you have to see both hairs at the same time, because if you come tomorrow and see only the second hair, we'll say there's a possibility the first day was Shuma Balma. It was only, an aberration. It was only like a mole or a growth and nothing to do with puberty. But the second day, you only saw the second day. You didn't see the first. By Chazak, it's impossible to see today what's going to be tomorrow. Since it's not Shayach to see today or tomorrow, so there's no sudden in the Chatzi Dava. You saw whatever was possible to see today, you saw. By Shtei-Sidus, you need to see Shtei-Sidus. In fact, you need to see both of them at the same time in order to say that reach puberty. If you only see one today, and tomorrow you only see one, it's talking no good because maybe tomorrow the first one's no longer there. Maybe it was just an aberration, nothing to do with puberty. So that's the difference between the two cases. That's how the other Rishonim learned the difference is in the case of one hair, the Eidus achieved nothing. When you come to Bezdin, we saw one hair a Gaba, we saw one hair a Kreisa, and therefore nothing. When you come to Bezdin, you say we saw 1 year Shimon was living in that land. Since it's not a chazakah, what happens as a result? Shimon now owes for the payers. You're squatting in someone else's field where you had no right to take the payers pay. So the edus was beneficial. Something happened here. Therefore, it's not a chatzi dover. That's not what their aim was. Their aim was to actually support him, but that's not the point. The point is, if you said an edus that has validity has some validity in Bezdin, Mashenkin, side has no validity. Other Rishonim want to say that we don't learn from the word davar because we know that we learn davar mimam, and we have many places shas. You know, get in other places that that we need the word davar, or in beginning Saita, we need the word davar to tell you that by davar sheba erva is just like davar sheba mama, that you need two witnesses. So you can't use davar for davar v'lechatzi davar. So they actually learn from the word yukam, that you have to establish the entire agency you're trying to bring. So therefore, it's missing. Further, the says, what happens if there were two witnesses saw that Shimon was 3 years in the field? One says, Shimon was there 8 weeks for 3 years. The other witness comes along and says, ate barley. Now we know that when it comes to, we'll learn Sanhedrin, when it comes to the fashists, if you have a stira in the essential testimony, it knocks it out. The normal because we say, okay, you weren't careful. But we'll talk about this. One guy says black clothing, one guy says white clothing. What the din is over here. They're contradicting each other. Yes, you said it's good. That's very good. The Gemara will talk about that soon. But right now, the Gemara thinks that even though they're contradicting each other, it still validates. I don't understand. We're looking more like the Rambam. El Me'atza, according to this, Echad Oimer, Achla Rishona Shlishi Chamishi. One guy said he ate the first, third, and fifth. The Echad Oimer, Achla Shniya Levi V'Shishi. The other guy says, I saw him 3 years, but he ate the second, the fourth, and the sixth. What's the link? Because they couldn't understand how can you have two Eidim who contradict. This is the testimony. This is the essential that the guy ate. He was in the field and he ate the crop. So and yet you're saying it's not a problem. Why is it not a problem? Because for Stammer, they're not talking about the same 3 years. The first and third and fifth, because in fact any farmer will tell you you're supposed to change, alternate what you're growing. So it must be the first and third and fifth year the guy grew wheat. Must be the second and fourth and sixth year he grew barley. And both Adam are saying the truth. And they're not contradicting each other, but we combine the fact that each one is saying 3 years. So we combine the 3 years. They say, if stam, forget about wheat or barley. One guy says, I saw the first and third and fifth. Other guy says, even though we're not talking about the same years, it should be valid. That's the question. What are you comparing? In your case, 135, 246, they're not two Adas coming together, they're talking about different stories. Over here, I'm talking about where they said 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They're talking about the same 3 years. They're contradicting each other. People, as you said, it's a minor detail, whether it's wheat or whether it's barley. The most important thing is that he was in the field and he ate the crop. We didn't really look properly to see what it was he was eating. That's not important here. In fact, he was eating, that's enough. That's how the Rashbam knows about it. Taste and Hashem have a big problem with Rashbam talking about it. So if he thought the pshat in the Gemara was that this guy was talking about year 135, that's why he had wheat, and the other guy was talking about 246, and that's why he had barley. So what do you mean elamout? That's exactly what he said. He said then one guy says 135, 246. It should be good age. Isn't that what Rabbi Yehuda just said? What are you repeating back to Rabbi Yehuda? What he just said. So therefore, they learned pshat that he was talking about that the first aid came along and said that it was 135. And he didn't grow anything the other years because a lot of farmers also leave their land fallow, and the other one says that they left their land fallow, and yet you're saying that it's all right. So then in the case, one guy says maybe he grew things the other years as well, but 135, 246 should be good ages as well, even though he might have wasn't part of a plan. And he says no, your whole assumption is wrong. That's assumption. Others differently, but that's nothing about. Like thinking about it. Shloisha Achi, there were 3 brothers. The Echad and a friend and a stranger. They started him on. So what happened was year 1 was one brother, year was Reuben, year 2 was Shimon, year 3 was Levi, but each one, and the same stranger was with all of them. Could be same stranger with all of them. It's all right. Eilu shows ages saying there's 3 different ages, and the Hein ages achas lazamba. When it comes to azamba, they're like one group, which means the not Muslim until all the Eidim were found to be liars. You might tell the story. We had a little bit of the subject in Ksubas as well. Just before we learn the story, in Ksubas they talk about there was a star, and every time you have a star, you have to authenticate it. You got to go to Bezdin, get a hempik, you got to get a stamp and approval of the spenker that this star is good. And technically, if the Eidim who actually signed come forward and they say Zek Savyadi, even though he's a single aid, he can say this is my Savyard and it's good. And each one then is believed in 50%. What happens if one of the Eidim died? One of the Eidim died. And the one has a discussion there when the aid comes along and says about a signature. Are they talking about Manisha B'Shtahim Eden or they're talking about the signatures? So when is this the guy himself about his signature? He's really more talking about, he's saying that I testified that the event that happened. But when you bring people off the street to say, is this signature Yankel's signature? They have no idea if Reuben lent money to Shimon or not. So they're mainly talking about the signature of Allah's signature. When the signature of Allah's signature, then whatever the star says happened. So what happens when the people died? So the one who's still surviving aid says, yeah, this is my Zek Savyadi. And then he looks around and says, oh, that's also the Ksavyad of my partner. And another guy off the street comes in. So you have 2 Eidim L'chayra on the Ksavyad, and then you have himself on his own Ksavyad. It's no good. Why? Because it comes out that you are taking out 3/4 of the money, basically, each one's 50-50 at max. And here, this aid's testimony is its own 50%, because I'm on a meeting, and then the 25% of the other guy. And then you have another 8 for 20, that's 75. That doesn't work. Right? So it has to be 50-50. The Gemara tells the story as follows. There was a star that you had to verify. There were 2 people signed on it. And Shochav Chad Benai, one of them died before they had a chance to verify the star. So So normally what happens, each one comes along and says, yeah, this is my handwriting. But one of them died before the very start. Also, achve the haidekoi. So not he himself, the one who signed, because we said before the one who signed cannot testify in the other signature, but his brother came and testified. The chad with another stranger. Las hude achsim they want to testify on the other person. Now, the problem is that the brother is a kodev. So the question is that valid or not? So Ravina thought, well, let's divide the shtar into two parts. It's no different than the chazaka. We divided the three into three parts. You can have three brothers, each year testify by a different year, and then you have a stranger joining each one. So the chayy is the same thing here. Here you have one brother for 50%, for that his own Xaviadi, and the other signature is the other brother. It's like a second year or a third year, and with another aid, should be all right. Exactly the same case. Only Rashi, midame, how can you compare? Over there, you don't find that over there total. If the idea of a kodev, you have two brothers coming to testify, we treat them like one. They're considered like one. It's not two eidim or one aid. So in the case of the 3 years, it's like you have. Let's imagine three brothers all one. So no. We imagine in this case we're not talking about the same thing. You talk about year number 1, year number 2, year number 3. Because we're a kodev, it's like 1/8. So you're 50%. More than 50, and the other 50%. Because each year you have the other 8. So, or it doesn't matter if each year is different age, but the point is the total of the strangers are 50%, and the total of this 1/8, the brothers, 50%. You can't have 1/8 more than 50%, even though there's an ach here. An ach is a brother of this guy. So, 50. So in the case of chazaka, it's 50-50. That's good. But in this case over here, because it's a brother of the surviving aid, and since the brother and the kodev are like one, you have now 75% based on one versus 25%. Over there, you don't have a case of 3/4 going on the aidus of the brothers. You only have 50% on the aidus of the brothers, and 50% with this stranger. Over here, you're deducting 3/4 based on one person because the brothers are considered 1/8, and therefore you cannot testify. We did have a Ochakir, remember?
One's testifying on what happened, one's testifying on the scene.
Yeah, but those testifying on but we need to establish Ksav Yodi. Once he says Ksav Yodi, we say Almana Shavashta Hemasin. And in fact, we say the same thing in the other aid. Once they testify that this signature is that valid, whatever that person's signature, then automatically the shtar becomes valid. So it's considered as if they're testifying about the same thing, and it's all the same. We had a whole Chakir, remember what the psul of Korb is it a gay Be'edis or is it but either way, we treat them like one. Getting back to okay, so that gets the next mission. I'll just quickly tell you, what's the idea of kasha zama v'loy kasha rasa? In logic, it doesn't make sense. Like the Tzdukim said, surely, koshkein if you killed an innocent man, surely. So we have two extreme. First of all, you have the Masha who says kal v'chaymer, you cannot punish for kal v'chaymer, and therefore, even though it makes sense that you should punish. But we can. You cannot punish him a kal v'chaymer, but there's no logic to that. So he said like this. The Bes Yosef says that Kesef Mishnah says this. The Kesef Mishnah on the Rambam says the shot like this. The whole idea of the punishment is a kapara. Every punishment is really a kapara. You did an aveda, and some avedas are so severe that the punishment has to be death, and that's how you have a kapara. But this aveda is so heinous. Is so cruel. You took an innocent man who did nothing wrong, and you watched how he's being put to death. There's no kapara for that. We can't give you that misa because that misa is not good enough for you. You'll have to get much worse than that in Gehenna. That's the Kesef Mishnah. The Ramban learns exactly the opposite. Remember, the Ramban learned Kabbalah. The Ramban says everything that happens in the world is as rocha protis. Especially the Eibush says Alakim Nitza Badas Kel. Everything that happens in the Bezdin, the Eibush is there, and he gets very upset if the Bezdin, is corrupt and because he's schlepping the Eibush into it. If the Eibush allowed the innocent man to be killed by his Bezdin following the laws of the Torah, it must be that innocent person actually deserved to die for another Aved he did. So why punish the Eidim when they did what the Eibush wanted ultimately to be done? And you can't make that cheshbon before it happened. But once it happened already, and it happened in the Bezdin who followed the laws of the Torah, Must be the right thing. When I cut, I cut.
Living with knowing that they were innocent.
They're happy to do extra. If they're so cruel and everything else.
They're gonna work out.
Hopefully. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.